Take your time.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Killing the Cabal. I have a very special guest that I'm extremely excited about. I actually saw Bishop Larry Gaiters on Edge of Wonder, and I knew immediately that I wanted to have him on the show, and I just feel so lucky and blessed that we're able to have him on because he's a very, very busy man right now. So Larry, I'm sorry, Bishop Gaiters, if you could just give us a little bit of a background on yourself. I know you're going to tell us a little bit about yourself, your show. I will have Bishop Gaiters' information linked in the description below for anybody that wants to seek him out on, on Twitter, and also his radio show. If you want to just give us a little bit of background and where we can find you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sister Christina, and to all of your listeners all over America and all over the world. It's a great honor to be a part of the Killing the Cabal podcast here tonight. You are doing a magnificent job for the kingdom of Jesus Christ, and through the Q revolution, as we are exposing this global Baphomet Luciferian deep state left. My name is Bishop Larry Gaiters. I am the host of the nationally and internationally syndicated radio show, Global Spiritual Revolution Radio, through the Life Radio Network, 92.9 FM, 1460 AM on your dial. You can go to our website right now at liferadionj.com. Again, beloved, liferadionj.com/Gaiters, which is Gaiters. And we're also so very blessed to be a part of the global worldwide conglomerate of the iHeart radio network in the iHeart media group. Also here in New York City, New York, we average between 20 to 25 million listeners all over the world in about 150 countries. So we have a wide range, a global reach, and we thank God for that. I've been in ministry for 40 years. I am a fifth generation Black conservative. My parents taught me, you're not a victim, you are a victor. And I am so very honored to be that. And that's kind of the DNA, the RNA of who the bishop is. I am called to be a contract killer for the Lord Jesus Christ. Now, one may ask, what does that mean, Bishop? You being an assassin, a contract killer. God has anointed me, and I said this on InfoWars on last week. I was so very blessed to be interviewed on InfoWars on the Alex Jones show. And basically, God has anointed me, Sister Christina, with a global assignment of decapitating this snake, this head, not only called Black Lives Matter in the Me Too movement, but also to totally decapitate this demonic system on the left. So I'm very excited to be with you tonight. We have a small staff of about 25 people. When you first reached out to me not too long ago, I knew automatically the mind of God wanted me to come on your show, because we average between 80 to 120 invitations from some radio show or podcast all over the world. So when you reached out, the mind of God said to me, yes, go on her show. So I want to get into tonight transhumanism. When you had first reached out to me and wanted me to talk on to your people concerning transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics, it's got to be of God, because some months ago, I was on Crowdsource the Truth with Jason Goodman, and I'm on that show as a regular guest each and every Tuesday. And some months ago, we talked about eugenics and identity politics. So in order for us to understand what transhumanism and transmutation is all about, we have to dissect, what does the word eugenics mean? Well, that term eugenics, my sister, is a combination of two Greek Hellenistic meanings. So eu, capital EU, means color. In genics, capital GENICS, means gene or genochrome. So this is where we get the terminology eugenics. It also means good gene or good stock. Now, the father of eugenics in the Western Hemisphere, as we're dissecting transhumanism and its connections to new eugenics tonight, Dr. Francis Galton, a British clinical psychologist and a psychiatrist, is the father of eugenics here in the Western Hemisphere, okay? And he was the first person, the first individual, Sister Christina, to coin the phrase eugenics. So then Dr. Francis Galton coined the term eugenics going back to 1883. And again, he is the father of eugenics here in the Western Hemisphere. And so before there was a Third Reich, there was Dr. Francis Galton. Now, as a side note, there is a woman that's highly connected to Barack Hussein Obama. Her name is Valerie June Jarrett. Her father is the late Dr. James E. Bowman, who passed away back in 2011. He was a Black eugenicist, Sister Christina, I kid you not. So Dr. James E. Bowman in 1961 and 62 went to the University of London, London School of Eugenics, or better known as the Galton School. So as we're dissecting transhumanism and its connections to what we call eugenics, we have to look at this foundation, this background foundation, so that your listeners can understand the foreground of what's happening today in the 21st century. So then the origins of what we call the originations of eugenics is from Sir Francis Galton, okay? Now, it's interesting, in 1994, Sir Francis Galton and many of his students later created the Racial Integrity Act in 1924. That's interesting, the Racial Integrity Act. So then Dr. Francis Galton, and this is a mind-blowing phrase and insight what I'm about to reveal to you, Sister Christina. So then the cousin of Dr. Francis Galton was a man by the name of Dr. Charles Darwin, the father of the Darwinian theory of evolution. Both Dr. Francis Galton and his second cousin, Dr. Charles Darwin, suffered from multiple nervous breakdowns. Wait a minute, I'm confused here. So you got two men who are actually not only the father of eugenics in the Western Hemisphere, Dr. Francis Galton, and the father of the Darwinian theory of evolution, which is based on demonic doctrine of evolution, Dr. Charles Darwin, were major proponents of racial hygiene, okay? And so then, but yet at the same time, woman of God, they suffered from multiple nervous breakdowns. Wait a minute. So that goes against their stance as being the pure race. Again, this is transhumanism, which is a transliteration into transmutation, which is connected to what we call new eugenics. So Dr. Francis Galton and his cousin, Dr. Charles Darwin, suffered from multiple nervous breakdowns. Now, Dr. Galton suffered from multiple personality disorders. This is the father of eugenics in the Western Hemisphere, who was the father of the psyop of the master race decades before there was an Adolf Hitler or a Third Reich. So Dr. Galton, Francis Galton, suffered from multiple personality disorders, including his cousin, Dr. Charles Darwin, who had suffered, woman of God, from a scientific term entitled proximal abandonment. So what is proximal abandonment? That is a psychological defect or condition where though the parents of Dr. Charles Darwin was there in the home, but his parents were emotionally absent. Well, Dr. Charles Darwin suffered from what we call proximal abandonment. but yet along with his second cousin, Dr. Francis Galton, are major proponents of eugenics in the Western Hemisphere, as we are breaking down transhumanism in its connection to eugenics. Now, I have listeners all over the world, and they constantly ask me, woman of God, Bishop, why do you constantly bring up the title or the theme or the topic that you're teaching throughout the broadcast? Because I also teach at both the college and the university level. And I tell my students all the time as a guest professor, it is important for me to constantly tell you the topic at hand, so that when you leave my classroom, you would never forget the symposium at hand. So transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. So then Dr. Charles Darwin and his cousin, Dr. Francis Galton, and more specifically, Dr. Francis Galton, he was financed by the Great Britain arm of the Rothschilds' Khazarian dynasty, okay? More specifically by Leopold Rothschild and Alfred de Rothschild, okay? So these devils, I'm talking about Dr. Francis Galton and his cousin, Dr. Charles Darwin, would later be the fathers of synthetic biology and gene editing. And we're going to get into that later on, as we're going to break down even what this word CRISPR, which is a scientific term, capital CRISPR, that's going to absolutely blow away the minds of your listeners, as we're dissecting for your listeners transhumanism, transmutation, and its connection to new eugenics. So then the Great Britain Rothschild arm supplied hundreds of thousands of dollars through the Pritzker family. Wait a minute now. So the Pritzker family today in Chicago, Illinois, where the governor of the state of Illinois, Jay Pritzker, is a blood descendant, woman of God, from the Pritzker law firm, Pritzker and Pritzker law firm, going back to the late 1800s in Kyiv in the Ukraine, that was the conduit from Rothschild money, and Rothschild money sent their money through the Pritzker family, the same family who are proponents of eugenics at the University of Chicago School of Medicine, called the Pritzker School of Medicine, as we're talking about transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. So through the late 1800s, the Pritzker law firm out of Kyiv in the Ukraine, right, was the conduit, Sister Christina, of receiving millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and eventually millions of dollars from the Rothschild banking arm in Britain to supply hundreds of thousands of dollars and eventually millions of dollars to Dr. Francis Galton, the father of eugenics in the Western Hemisphere. And the Pritzker family today, and this is going to blow your mind as well, as we're talking about transhumanism, its connection to new eugenics. Now, the late Kobe Bryant, I completed a 7-volume series. Now, to all of your listeners, if you guys get an opportunity, go to our official website at youtube.com/c, then / Global Spiritual Revolution Radio Media Group, or just type in Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. And there is a 7-volume series that I teach on Kobe Bryant, being a Luciferian project completed. Now, as a side note, the plane or the helicopter, woman of God, that Kobe Bryant died in was called a Sikorsky 76B helicopter, that back in January 2017 was bought from the Mormon group, and its owner is Governor Jay Pritzker in the Pritzker family out of Chicago, Illinois. Wait a minute, I'm confused. So then the helicopter that Kobe Bryant died on, and this is a side note of transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. So Kobe Bryant got caught up into this cabal of these deep state players that eventually closed his eyes on the 26th of January, 2020. So then the Island Holdings Group out of Van Nuys, California, sent executives, I don't know why they sent the entire executive board of the Islands Holdings Group during the month of January 2017 to the city of Chicago, Illinois, to purchase the same helicopter that Kobe Bryant died on the 26th of January, 3 years later, 2020. So then this Prisco family, back in the late 1800s, was the family through whom the Galton family had hired. So the attorneys that represented Francis Galton and his family, and Francis Galton's mother was a Barclay, a part of the British banking dynasty called the Barclays, out of London, England. As we're talking about transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics, we have to follow the money in order to get to these devils. Don't follow the devil to get to the money. Follow the money to get to the devil. So now the Prisker family back in the 1800s was the conduit through which the Rothschilds sent Dr. Francis Galton hundreds of thousands of dollars and eventually millions of dollars in British pounds, okay, in order to build up what they call new eugenics or eugenics. Now, I don't understand. Now, one may say, wait a minute now, Francis Galton lived in England. The British banking arm of the Rothschilds was in England. Why didn't just the Rothschilds send Dr. Galton the money directly instead of going through the Priskers out of Kiev in the Ukraine? I'm glad you asked. This is called the compartmentalization of darkness. These devils, Sister Christina, they operate in layers, okay? So then as we're talking about transhumanism, okay, GEO-ENGINEERING, gene splicing, and gene therapy, and its connection to new eugenics here. And so then Julius Rosenwald, years later, now Julius Rosenwald has a powerful connection to eugenics. Now, to your historians of Chicago history, Julius Rosenwald was the creator and the founder of the Sears Roebuck Company. Now, Julius Rosenwald also was one of the major financial backers for a Department of Eugenics at the University of Chicago School of Medicine, which is now called the Prisco School of Medicine, which comes from the name of the family who not only took out Kobe Bryant, was also the name of the family that back in the late 1800s in Kiev in the Ukraine was the attorney firm, was the law firm that represented the father of eugenics in the Western Hemisphere. And that's Dr. Francis Galton, as we're talking about transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. So Julius Rosenwald also wrote a $50,000 check, woman of God, to the Tuskegee Institute. We're talking about eugenics. He wrote a $50,000 check to the Tuskegee Institute, in 1930, a year before his death. For what? To create the syphilis conspiracy, okay? Where 600 Black men and women from 1932 to 1972 had died because they were injected, Sister Christina, through new eugenics with syphilis with Julius Rosenwald money, including later the Prisker money, okay? These are devils as we're talking about transhumanism and transmutation being connected to new eugenics. So then Julius Rosenwald created these 5,000 Black Rosenwald schools in the South. 90% of your major Black colleges and universities were not created with Black money. Black folk didn't have that type of money. No. So most of the colleges, historically, historical colleges and universities was started with Jewish Khazarian money. Now, someone's going to say, well, Bishop, you're an anti-Semite. No, listen, every Hebrew is a Jew, but not every Jew is a Hebrew. Another topic for another day. So as we stay on point concerning transhumanism, so then Julius Rosenwald, who had supplied $50,000 to Tuskegee Institute, okay, the year before his death, okay, for the creation of the syphilis conspiracy, okay, which President Bill Clinton only gave an apology. Now, I'm going to say this as a side note. I don't believe in reparations, okay, because the acronym term for reparations needs to be repaired. I tell Black people, do you need to be repaired? No. And then I don't believe, neither do I not believe in reparations, which means to be repaired, but I don't believe in affirmative action, Sister Christina, because the original term, talking about eugenics, so the original term for an affirmative action was called affirmative property. So you don't need to be repaired because you're not a property. But the Luciferian deep state left, they treat people like they are a property that needs to be repaired. Thereby, that is affirmative action property through reparations to be repaired. This is transhumanism. So transhumanism has to be psychological before it can become physical, and its connection to new eugenics. So the Stevanovich Institute on the Formation of Knowledge and the Pathology of Medicine, specializing in, get this, genetics and African-American studies, which Dr. James E. Bowman, the late Dr. Bowman, was the father of Valerie June Jarrett. Now, this is going to blow your mind as well. Back in 1939, the grandmother of Valerie June Jarrett, who signed on to exterminate her own people through the 1939 Negro Project. Okay, so the 1939 Negro Project, Sister Christina, was the final solution for the extermination of Black people. Where and how? Through Planned Parenthood. Okay, so going back to 1929, it was Margaret Sanger who went to Harlem, New York, here in New York City, and was recruiting African-American men like Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, who is so revered in the annals of Black educational history. Dr. Du Bois was a Black eugenicist. Dr. Du Bois, along with Dr. Henry McKee Minton of the Black Boulez Secret Society, and if your listeners get an opportunity, study the history of the Black Boulez Secret Society, capital B-O-U-L''E, which means in Greek Sigma Pi Phi. So they are the Black skulls and bones, and whose job is to protect not Black America, not Americans like you and I, my sister, the Boulez Secret Society, which began on the 15th of May in 1904 in the hometown of Kobe Bean Bryant, okay, with Rockefeller Foundational money in order to protect the system that has enslaved people of color for 500 years. I'm not talking about white people. I'm talking about this Khazarian satanic system. Because as a side note, sister, I'm going to say something that's going to blow your mind. You probably already know this, but what I'm about to reveal, the KKK was not created by white people. I got everyone's attention now. The Ku Klux Klan was created by a Rothschild agent, an attorney who never graduated from law school, a man by the name of Judah Philip Benjamin, okay, who then in Pulaski, Tennessee in 1865, with Rothschild money, created the KKK out of the psyop of the Knights of the Golden Circle to bring about eugenics, not just against people of color, any person, Black or white, white or Black, who supported both the Republican and the Conservative Party of the GOP. So the KKK was designed to destroy not just Black people, but any person, race, creed, color, or ethnicity that supported Christian conservatism. So white people had nothing to do with the KKK. Let me say it again. White people had nothing to do with the creation of the Ku Klux Klan. That lie has been perpetuated out of Hollywood, which has produced Hollywan, the wand of a witch that's made out of Hollywood. And it goes back to the 1912 book by Israel Cohen, A Racial Program for the 20th Century. And this is Transhumanism here, a book that's now banned in the United States that goes back to 1912. So Israel Cohen was a 33 and 1/2 degree Scottish Rite Mason who was also a part of the Fabian Society and a eugenicist who had predicted, my sister, and I quote, that we're going to depopulate Black versus white, white versus Black by perpetuating through Hollywood mediumship. So the term mediumship comes from the word medium, which means witch, okay? So the Crack News Network, they're witches. NBC, MSNBC with Rachel Maddow, all these devils are witches and warlocks. As we're talking about transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. And so then back to Julius Rosenwald. He also created many of Black colleges and universities in the South. Wait a minute now. On one hand, he is a eugenicist, Julius Rosenwald, but on the other hand, he's building Black colleges and universities. Now, as a side note, there is an African-American all-female college called Spelman College out of Atlanta, Georgia. Well, that school is named after the wife of John D. Rockefeller, Laura Spelman. Laura Spelman was also a Khazarian Jew in the bloodline of the Rothschilds going back to England all the way back to the 1400s. So then, Laura Spelman had married John D. Rockefeller, who also helped build the Prisco, or the School of Medicine, which is now called the Prisco School of Medicine. So Laura Spelman was a eugenicist, Sister Christina, but yet a Black female college is named after her. So you know what, can I share this with you? 90% of the bishop's suffering doesn't come from white people. 90% of my suffering comes from my own people in the church who think that I am a sellout. They think I am a house Negro, that I am, listen, I don't care. My job, I am a contract killer. I'm an assassin. My job is to cut the devil's head off on the left by exposing truth. And in it calls, as we're talking about transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. So Dr. James E. Bowman, right? So then that he was the father of Valerie June Jarrett. But there's a woman whose name is on the 1939 Negro Project for the extermination of Black America through Planned Parenthood, a woman by the name of Dorothy Taylor. Who's Dorothy Taylor? The grandmother of Valerie June Jarrett on Valerie June Jarrett's mother's side. So the mother of Valerie Jarrett, Barbara Taylor, who co-founded many Black eugenics organizations going back to the late 1950s, early 1960s. And the mother of Barbara Taylor was also the grandmother of Valerie Jarrett. That's Dorothy Taylor. Dorothy Taylor was an agent provocateur for Planned Parenthood, for the extinction, for the extermination through abortion of their own people. So many Black organizations who had signed up to support Margaret Sanger's, not just Planned Parenthood, which began in Black America in 1929, right here in Harlem, New York, because you got 500 African-American pastors, a part of the Harlem Pastoral Institute here in Harlem, New York, going back to 1929, supported this witch, Margaret Sanger, because each preacher got $500. Wait a minute now. You telling me the life of a child is only worth $500? This is transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics, okay? And so how did Planned Parenthood begin? Well, John D. Rockefeller gave $100,000 to his best friend, Julius Rosenwald, who gave that money, or transferred that money to his best friend, Hollywood film director Cecil B. DeMille, who was sleeping with Margaret Sanger. Now, Margaret Sanger, listen, I'm going to say this. People may not like it, but Margaret Sanger was a whore. That's all she was. Wait a minute now. You're telling black families to exterminate their children because children will be a burden on society, but yet Margaret Sanger is whoring around on her husband, okay? Why? Because Margaret Sanger was a whore. I just gotta tell it like it is. Why? Because I'm a contract killer, as we're talking about transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics here. So then 1883, quickly, going back to Dr. Francis Galton. So Dr. Francis Galton, through the Rothschild Great Britain dynasty, by using the law firm of the Prisker family, out of Kiev in the Ukraine, the same family that has now produced the Priskers out of Chicago, Illinois, who own the Mormon Group, and the Mormon Group owned the Sikorsky 76B helicopter that Kobe Bryant died on. And also the Mormon Group owns 20% of the Acme Brick Company. Yes, the same thousands pallets of bricks that the left has been using for the past month to destroy property through discombobulation. Well, 80% of the Acme Brick Company out of Springfield, Minnesota is owned by Warren Buffett. So don't be fooled by this Sunnybrook Farm grandpa persona that Warren Buffett has. He's a devil. So he owns 80% of the Acme Company, and Governor Jay Prisker, who killed Kobe Bryant, owns the other 20%, as we're talking about transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics here. And so then, as a side note, when we talk about eugenics and the pathology through African-American studies, the Prisker family, Julius Rosenwald, okay, again, John D. Rockefeller given $100,000, okay, to Julius Rosenwald, who gave that money to Cecil B. DeMille. As a side note, well, not only was Cecil B. DeMille sleeping with Margaret Sanger, but the author H.G. Wells, a writer, was sleeping with Margaret Sanger while she was married, having 3 sons. Okay, these are hypocrites. Just like Francis Galton had a nervous breakdown, and his second cousin, Charles Darwin, had a nervous break. These are hypocrites. And the devils on the left, as we are exposing them through the psyop, through the revelation of Q tonight, as we're talking about transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. This is mind-blowing information that you guys are receiving tonight. And so then Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, Dr. Henry McKee Menton, who had created the Boulez Secret Society on the 15th of May in 1904 in the city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the hometown of Kobe Bean Bryant. So then the Boulez is created, is designed to not to protect Black America or white America or Americans like you and I. The Boulez are designed to protect the system of what I call the Knights of the Round Table. Now, in the 1954 book entitled The History of Sigma Pi Phi by Dr. Charles H. Wesley, he says on page 146 that there are 9 families that control 99% of the world's wealth. We're talking about the Rothschilds, the Oppenheimers, the Warburgs, the Habsburgs, the DuPonts, the Lee family out of Hong Kong, who's bankrolling COVID-19, who also owns an online casino gambling organization called Fun 88, which Kobe Bryant was the face of Fund 88, which is now controlled by the Chinese mob called the Triads. So these 9 families, Rothschilds, Oppenheimers, Warburgs, okay, all of these families, including the Sassoon family that produced Vidal Sassoon, right? If you don't look good, we don't look good. That character, the Sassoon family, who had bankrolled the global opium war from 1839 to 1860 during the 2 Chinese opium wars. It's that same Sassoon family that's controlling not only the opium drug trade, but the cocaine and heroin trade out of Afghanistan, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan, what we call the Golden Triangle. So the Boulez were designed with Rockefeller money, the black Boulez, to protect the system, to protect these devils who have a stranglehold over 99% of the world's wealth, as we're talking about transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics quickly here. And so then, as we move forward here, man, it's going to get deeper here now. So as we're talking about new eugenics, now there are some famous people, Sister Christina, who supported eugenics going back during the time of not only the Pritzkers, in the early 1930s, including John D. Rockefeller, including Dr. James E. Bowman, including, okay, a man by the name of Professor Alf Alving, capital A-L-F. His last name is capital A-L-V-I-N-G. Alf Alving is a blood descendant of the Oppenheimers out of South Africa, who controlled the diamond mines to this day in South Africa. So then Alf Alving, his protege was Dr. James E. Bowman, the late Dr. Bowman, who was the father of Valerie June Jarrett. This is the reason why Valerie June Jarrett supports little Tony Midget Fauci. And people get mad at me because I call him midget. I'm not talking about small people. I'm talking about the demon that's inside of Tony Fauci. Tony Little Midget Fauci and this Jezebel named Dr. Deborah 3000 Scarfs Burks. They are sent by the deep state to undermine the president, but it's not going to work. That's what I'm talking about transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. So you get people in history going back to the early part of the 1930s, Carrie Marcus, okay, of Neiman Marcus, okay, the Neiman Marcus clothing chain, they supported eugenics, okay. The Regensteins, okay, some of the most powerful families in Chicago, they supported eugenics, okay. And there's a book called The University, the City, and the World, okay, on page 215, including the university and the city, from medieval origins to the present, edited by Dr. Thomas Bender, looking backward, true stories from Chicago's past by Dr. Walter Roth, a Jew. He talks about that there was an organization, my sister, going back to 1929, called ICOR. I'm talking about transhumanism, ICOR, capital I-C-O-R, which means the Organization for Jewish Colonization. The Organization for Jewish Colonization, that on page 72 of the book entitled The Ruling Elite by Dr. Diana Spingola, a Jew, she says that Jacob Schiff of Kuhn, Loeb and Company, who supported eugenics, also supported the Bolsheviks during the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution, wrote a $20 million check to give to Leon Trotsky, who was also a supporter of eugenics, transhumanism, and transmutation. So you got devils supplying millions of dollars with the money to Bolshevik devils to take out Tsar Nicholas II and the Romanov family in order to bring forth a communist caliphate in Russia, which became the Soviet Union, backed by Khazarian satanic money here in New York City. This is transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. And so then people cannot say, well, Bishop, you are anti-Semitic. No, because all of these authors, my sister, they're all Jewish, okay? So people cannot play the anti-Semitic card with me because all of my information is from Jewish scholars, okay? So Jacob Prisker, and later his son Nicholas Prisker, takes over the law firm, and of course that's another topic for another day. So then we further get into transhumanism, its connection to new eugenics, okay? And then we got the nephew of Jacob Prisker. I'm just giving his history lesson concerning not just eugenics, but transhumanism and transmutation. So then, the nephew of Jacob Prisker was a man by the name of Dr. Lev Shestov, capital S-H-E-S-T-O-V. He was a Russian philosopher and a philosopher of existentialism who was a major proponent of eugenics and transhumanism and transmutation pre-Soviet Union, going back to the year of 1910, 7 years before the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution. And so then later on, we get CIA and MI6 and the Soviet KGB, all because of Operation Paperclip, post-World War II, that were proponents of not just transhumanism and transmutation, but they were also proponents of a new type of eugenics, okay? As we're going to blow away the minds of your listeners today concerning, again, transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. Now, from the American side, it gets more crazier now here. There was a man by the name of Dr. Charles Davenport, okay, who visited Dr. Francis Galton in 1902 in Great Britain. Now, Dr. Charles Davenport was a Harvard-educated professor, a major proponent of eugenics, traveled to England in 1902, okay? And he was also a previous professor, where? At the University of Chicago, the same school that Barack Obama taught law in many years later. And so Dr. Charles Davenport created the American system of eugenics, which was established in 1904. Dr. Charles Davenport, all right, here in Long Island, received financial backing from the Carnegie Institute out of Washington, D.C., to create the Eugenics Record Office called the ERO at Cold Spring Laboratory here in Long Island, New York, which exists to this day. The Cold Spring Laboratory exists to this day, being funded by the Democratic Party for what? For the extermination of America. In other words, through transhumanism and transmutation, which we call new eugenics. So the Carnegie Institute supported new eugenics, okay? So then Dr. Francis Galton, being a student, okay, was a student of Dr. Francis Galton. Dr. Francis Galton was the teacher of Dr. Charles Davenport. Wait a minute now. So then Dr. Charles Davenport was mentored by the father of eugenics in the Western Hemisphere, Dr. Francis Galton. And you can check this out, please, on galton.org, galton.org, and the Barclay family on the mother side of Dr. Francis Galton also financially supported him as well. So it's interesting that Dr. Charles Davenport in 1904 created the American Genetic Association, okay, with the financial backing from Dr. John Harvey Kellogg. Oh my God, I gotta say this here. This is gonna blow your mind again. Now people are saying, well, what does all this have to do, Bishop, with new eugenics? To understand what's happening today, we have to lay a foundation what happened going back 50, 60, 70 years ago. So then the father of global eugenics is Lucifer himself. And that's a side note. What is the first letter of Lucifer? L. The first letter of Satan, S. The first letter of devil, D. There's your LSD. So then the father of LSD is Lucifer, the father of the Illuminato, all right? And this is where we get the term in North American Trade Organizational Alliance, or NATO, all right, which was a creation post-World War II from former Nazis who were also practitioners of eugenics. So the term Illuminati, Illuminato, okay, they are also the fathers of eugenics. So Dr. John Harvey Kellogg, Dr. John Harvey Kellogg of the Kellogg Cornflakes Cereal Corporation. Yes, it is that same Dr. John Harvey Kellogg who created the Kellogg Corporation out of Battle Creek, Michigan. They are proponents of eugenics to this day. So the question is, what are they putting in their cereal? That's another topic for another day. So then Dr. Charles Davenport, being mentored by Dr. Francis Galton. Dr. Francis Galton, his educational son or spiritual son, Dr. Charles Davenport, received funding from the Dr. John Harvey Kellogg, from the Kellogg Corporation, from the Carnegie Institute, from the Rockefeller Foundation, and from Mary Harriman, who is the widow of E.H. Harriman, the railroad tycoon. They supported eugenics, Sister Christina, as we're talking about transhumanism in its connection to new eugenics. Also through the backing of the Kellogg Corporation, the Carnegie Corporation, Mary Harriman, E.H. Harriman, and the Rockefeller Foundation, okay? Dr. Charles Davenport created the American Genetics Association that was formerly called the American Breeders Association. Oh, what are you breeding? You're breeding a certain race, an Aryan race, to be superior to any other. That's eugenics, okay? And as we're talking about transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. So the American Breeders Association was created in 1903. In another couple of minutes, we're going to give the floor over to you for Q&A. So then, as a side note, William Proctor and James Gamble from the Procter & Gamble company that exists to this day, they supported eugenics. They supported transhumanism and transmutation in order to give birth to a global new eugenic conspiracy to dissolve a certain population. This is where we get the term solve et coagula. Now, if you type in the term Baphomet, okay, and the term Mohammed or Muhammad is encoded in the term Baphomet. That was the god, is still the god of the Illuminati today, the Luciferian deep state on the left, going back to the year 1119 AD, through the creation of the Knights Templar, through Jacques de Molay in Jerusalem, Israel, and hundreds of years later, in 1540, the creation of the Jesuit Secret Society in Paris, France, led by a killer by the name of Ignatius of Loyola, who is the motto for the video game Assassin's Creed. I want all the teenagers to listen to me tonight as we're talking about transmutation, transhumanism, and its connection to eugenics. So then, Jacques de Molay was the last founding father of the Knights Templar, and Ignatius Loyola, which many colleges and universities are named after him. Him, along with 6 other men, were proponents of eugenics long before there was a Dr. Francis Galton or a Dr. Charles Davenport. In the video game that many kids are playing today, Assassin's Creed is mottoed after both the Knights Templar in 1119 AD in Jerusalem, Israel, and in 1540 to the Jesuit Secret Society. They were all killers representing the global Vatican system, as we're talking about transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. And the Catholic Church, the Vatican system has a brand new PSYOP program. Okay, it's called Eugenic 101. So I want to talk about that in the next 10 to 15 minutes. Eugenic, where they're using, along with Chinese money, because you have to understand, sister, a few months before the unleashment of COVID-19, China had signed a global agreement with the Vatican a few months before the unleashment of COVID-19. Now, the Trojan horse, the pretext was, well, China wanted to choose bishops, Catholic bishops, into ordainment. Wait a minute now, I'm confused here now, sister. Now, I'm not talking about the 1.4 billion Chinese who live in the People's Republic of China. I am talking about that evil, demonic regime that needs to be taken out of Beijing with President Xi Jinping, who is a major proponent of transhumanism, transmutation, and being connected to eugenics here tonight. So now, getting back here, as we're coming in to William Proctor and James Gamble, were major proponents and of eugenics, but are also major supporters of Dr. Charles Davenport, including the Kellogg Corporation, okay? Including later a family out of Europe called the Scherff family. Oh, capital S-C-H-E-R-F-F, and the Scherff family, right? Right before the advent of World War II, Sister Christina, changed their name from Scherff to Bush. The Bush family, that's not their real name. Their real name is the Scherff dynasty, where they changed their name before the advent of World War II to hide their complicity in the extermination, not just Jewish people, but also in their proponent, them being a proponent of transhumanism and transmutation and social engineering of what we call new eugenics here. These are devils, and this is the reason why, my sister, they hate Donald Trump. Let me tell you the reason why they hate Donald Trump. They hate Donald Trump because Donald Trump has been ordained by God to expose this entire Baphomet Luciferian system. And let me say this before we move on further. This entire democratic party is going to be destroyed. Black Lives Matter, they're going to be destroyed, Sister Christina. Me Too movement, now they had a great beginning. I don't mind women coming out and exposing a problem of rape. That has to be exposed. The problem I have with Me Too and Black Lives Matter is the weaponization of it. It's all going down. And you notice how Hollywood has been quiet for the past few months? Because God has anointed and ordained our great president, President Donald J. Trump, who will win re-election in the biggest landslide in U.S. presidential history. And it goes, there's no way we're going to vote for Uncle Joe, sleepy, crippin', sniffing Biden, who can't remember his right arm from his left foot, as we're talking about transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. So all of these foundations, the Carnegie Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, even the Ford Foundation today, they support transhumanism, transmutation, and social engineering, which is a sophisticated term for eugenics here, as we're talking about and connecting the pieces of transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. Theodore Roosevelt was a major proponent of eugenics. Helen Keller, bless her soul, blind Helen Keller, was a supporter of eugenics. Wait a minute, I'm confused now, Sister Christina. She was blind, but she's a proponent of eugenics. Wait a minute now. If that's the case, then she should have been exterminated. This is the reason why these people are hypocrites. Going back to Francis Galton having a nervous breakdown, and his second cousin, Dr. Charles Darwin, being the father of the Darwinian theory of evolution, had nervous breakdowns. These are hypocrites as we're talking about their connection to new eugenics. Even today, the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute, not only out of Germany, but Kaiser Permanente, which is a major medical center in Oakland, California, in the San Francisco Valley. So the Kaiser Permanente medical system is connected to eugenics, along with Kaiser Wilhelm, their founder, going back to the Kaiser Wilhelm Empire prior to World War II, going back before World War I. So when I'm saying, when I'm doing, I'm just connecting dots to all of these people going back into history who were proponents of new eugenics. Now, Dr. Joseph Mengele, okay, a Nazi devil, was also a member. And matter of fact, as a side note, Dr. Mengele knew Dr. Charles Davenport. They were great friends. The same Dr. Charles Davenport who created the eugenics record office here in New York called the ERL. And he was the protege of Dr. Francis Galton, the father of eugenics in the Western Hemisphere. But Dr. Joseph Mengele, the Doctor of Death, was a member of the International Federation of Eugenics Organizations, along with Dr. Max Planck, capital P-L-A-N-C-K, of the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute, which is a secret society, okay, which is nothing more than a secret society of eugenicists, okay? Now, today, the Kaiser Permanente Medical Institute in Oakland, California, is connected to Dr. Max Planck's and his Kaiser Wilhelm Institute going back predating World War II. These are all eugenicists. They're all devils who knew Margaret Sanger, okay, as we're talking about transhumanism in their connection to new eugenics. A couple more minutes. So then Margaret Sanger, born on the 14th of September in 1879, right here in Corning, New York. Now, she's an interesting character, okay, because her father, Michael Hennessy Higgins, the father of Margaret Sanger, was a man by the name of Michael Hennessy Higgins. Michael Hennessy Higgins supported a national major communist socialist, okay, by the name of Emma Lazarus. Emma Lazarus was a major proponent of not only transhumanism and transmutation, but a major proponent of eugenics. Wait a minute now. So Michael Hennessy Higgins, the father of Margaret Sanger, was an ardent supporter of Emma Lazarus, who was a communist, a socialist, a Marxist, and a fascist, who tore up the Constitution, a copy, along with her 16-year-old protege, Emma Goldman. They were communists and socialists, okay? So then Emma Lazarus was supported by the father. This is important. Emma Lazarus was supported by the father of Margaret Sanger. Who's Emma Lazarus? She's the face of the Statue of Liberty. The same woman who is out here in the East River Harbor with her face as the Statue of Liberty, she was a eugenicist. A transmutationist. She believed in the extermination of a people who did not look like her. Why is she the symbol of liberty? Oh man, I'm talking about Emma Lazarus, as we're talking about transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. So no, so then when we talk about this witch going back, was it last year or some months ago, during President Trump's speech, one of his State of the Union addresses, okay, it was the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, who tore up the speech of President Trump. Well, going back as far as back as into the middle part of the late 1800s. Now, the father, I cannot stress this enough, the father of Margaret Sanger, Michael Hennessy Higgins, okay, who had a liaison with a Harlem nightclub dancer, a black woman, and they had a daughter, and the daughter ended up dead a few years later in the bedroom of Margaret Sanger, the teenager. Maybe Margaret Sanger got her psyop of killing black folk because her father, Michael Hennessy Higgins, had a liaison with an African-American nightclub dancer. Another topic for another day. And so then, Michael Hennessy Higgins, the father of Margaret Sanger, supported Emma Lazarus. Emma Lazarus is the face of the Statue of Liberty. The father of Emma Lazarus was a former slave owner, Moses Lazarus, that came from South America. These people are hypocrites, as we're talking about transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. So not just Emma Lazarus, but her teenage protege, a young woman, a 16-year-old woman by the name of Emma Goldman, who later was excommunicated by J. Edgar Hoover of the FBI. Emma Goldman, not Emma Lazarus, because Emma Lazarus had died. She's the face of the Statue of Liberty. She had died some years later. But Emma Goldman, her protege, okay, a communist and a socialist, and notice who was excommunicated out of the United States. I'm talking about Emma Goldman, because she wanted to overthrow the United States of America. As we're talking about transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. And as a side note, okay, and again, I don't teach victimhood, I don't teach black and white, but the original Statue of Liberty that was given from the French to the United States was a woman of color with a Bible in one hand and a ball and chain in the next. But these devils on the left, the Republican Party had nothing to do with this, okay? Christian conservatives had nothing to do with it. It's always on the left. It was the Democratic Party who created slavery. It was not the Republican Party, as we are talking about transhumanism, okay, and its connection to what we call new eugenics, okay? And in my conclusion here, now it gets even more deeper here as we're talking about what is transhumanism and what is transmutation. Now, transhumanism is a psyop or a psychology which the Luciferian deep state, they want to begin to, through gene therapy and gene splicing and cloning, these devils have been doing this for hundreds of years, they want to create a master race. They are continuing, my sister, the psyop of the Third Reich, because the term Reich not only means realm, it means psyop. Well, the Fourth Reich today is Black Lives Matter. Antifa and Black Lives Matter, they are the Fourth Reich. And the flag of Antifa, as a side note, not to get away from transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics, examine the flag of Antifa, of a black and red flag that looks like double Soviet sickles going back to the Soviet Union during the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution. And then the letter A with the circle around the letter A is all rooted in divinational witchcraft. Guess who created the logo that you and I see today, that the Antifa terrorist organization, they walk around with? It was created in 1915 by a Russian killer by the name of Mikhailovich Molotov, who is the creator of the Molotov cocktail. I kid you not. So the creator of the Molotov cocktail, Mikhailovich Molotov, who was a political protege, okay, of Joseph Stalin, okay, all throughout his entire life until the death of Joseph Stalin in 1953. So then the logo of Antifa was created by a Soviet Russian killer, Mikhailovich Molotov, who created the Molotov cocktail. Who's using the Molotov cocktail? Antifa and Black Lives Matter. So both Antifa and Black Lives Matter will be destroyed because, as a side note, Black Lives Matter is ran by 3 witches. I'll say it again. Black Lives Matter is ran and being controlled with Rothschild money through George Soros. All 3 of these women, Alicia Garza, Opa Tometi, okay, and Patrice Cullors, they are lesbian witches. That there is no fear in me, Sister Christina. I told you I'm a contract killer. These women are witches. And the entire spiritual dogmatic psyop of Black Lives Matter is modeled after the Thuggee secret society going back to India in the 1300s, okay, which eventually they were exterminated. I'm talking about the Thuggee secret society in the early part of the 1900s through the British Crown. So the term thug came from the Thuggee secret society, okay, where the Thuggee secret society worshiped a goddess named Kali, capital K-A-L-I, which has 3 Sanskrit meanings, not to get away from transhumanism. But the goddess of the thugs was a woman by the name of Kali with a K. Some spell it with a C, C-A-L-I, like California. Cali, okay, fornia means fornication, or porneia, which is a Greek word, fornication, pedophilia, okay? So then the term thug life has come from the psyop where the thugs had worshipped Kali, which means life, which means diva. And this is why I tell women, Sister Christina, stop calling yourself diva, because the acronym for the term, what we call, you and I call divination, is the term diva. I'm a diva. No, that term diva means goddess. She's a name of a witch, both in Greek and Indian mythology. Another topic for another day. So the 3 Sanskrit interpretations, not to get away from transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. So the goddess of the Thuggee secret society, Kali, K-A-L-I, okay, had 10 arms, okay, and around her body had the skulls of the men that she had conquered. Now remember these 3 witches, okay, Alicia Garza, Patrice Cullors, and Opa Tometi, they run Black Lives Matter because their slave master, okay, or masters, is George Soros, whose name is George Soros, who had his own people gassed during the advent of World War II, okay? And Barack Hussein Barry Soetoro with 1,000 different aliases, along with Bill Gates, through the Bill and Melinda Robin Williams Gates Foundation. They're all slave masters for Black Lives Matter. So the goddess Kali, transhumanism, okay, her name means diva, divination. Her name also means life. This is where we get the term thug life. And the third name of Kali is CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. The Council on American Islamic Relations out of Chicago, Illinois. They're supplying Black Lives Matter through Act Blue millions of dollars. But all of that is coming to an end as we're talking about in our conclusion, transhumanism and its connection to what we call new eugenics here. And so then in my conclusion here, it's a lot of information to unpack, but what I wanted to do, woman of God, is to present a historical background into what we call eugenics today. Now, one of the most powerful organizations on this earth, they are major proponents of eugenics. And that is actually three major organizations. Thank you, Holy Spirit. These three major organizations are called the Novartis AG Group out of Basel, Switzerland. They're one of the most powerful pharmaceutical companies on this earth. And the Pirbright Institute out of the United Kingdom, through which Bill and Melinda Robin Williams Gates supply millions of dollars for the creation of COVID-11 to 18. And the third pharmaceutical company, which is really one of the biggest eugenics corporations on this earth, the GlaxoSmithKline Group, which bought both Novartis AG for $13.7 billion in March of 2018, and thereby bought COVID 1 through 10 from Novartis because they bought it from the Chiron Corporation back in 2006, capital CHIRON. So you can go to the National Institutes of Health website, nih.gov, go to the upper right-hand corner, type in Chiron, capital CHIRON, in the term COVID is a Hebrew interpretation into the English as Kobe. Kobe Bryant, another topic for another day. But the three major pharmaceutical corporations of Novartis AG, in the Pirbright Institute, in the GlaxoSmithKline Group, are major proponents, Sister Christina, of not only transhumanism and transmutation, but also they're connected to the synthetic biological schemes, okay, through the pharmaceutical industrial complex. So what am I saying? I'm saying that you and I are eyewitnessing the advent of a new Cold War. Not the Cold War of what we call biological weapons of mass destruction, like hydrogen or atom bombs. But you and I, my sister, are eyewitnessing the advent of a new Cold War through not only the global vaccinational industrial complex, but you and I are witnessing the takeover of our country by the left, by destroying the first Constitution of 1776, which was later ratified in 1781, by destroying the first Constitution, which is never going to work, by incorporating the second Constitution, which is a counterfeit Constitution, in 1871. So they 95 years from 1776 to 1871, with the pressure of the Vatican system through Pope Pius IX in 1871, putting pressure with the financial backing of the Rothschild families in Eastern and West and Central and Western Europe, putting pressure on President Ulysses S. Grant in 1871 to create not only a second constitution, which has forced the United States to become a corporation, and thereby giving the international bankers a free hand of controlling our nation. And this is the reason why, my sister, this is the reason why they hate President Trump. So then they hate President Trump because President Trump, who is making America great again and will keep America great again through COVID-19. See, President Trump is a genius. The second Constitution is being played against itself. In other words, President Trump said, okay, you want to run up the debt because you want billions of dollars for businesses. Okay. So the second Constitution is going to destroy itself, thereby giving way for the first Constitution, where true Americans like you and I, my sister, are supporting the first original Constitution. We were not designed by God through the framers to be a corporation. We were designed by God through the founding fathers, my sister, to be a Christian nation, a republic built upon the word of Almighty God, whose name is the Lord Jesus Christ. We are not an atheist nation. We are not a Hindu or a Confucius nation. We are not a Muslim nation. The devil is a lie. We are a Christian nation. One nation under God, whose name is the Lord Jesus Christ, with liberty and justice for all. So I got to say this before we end it here tonight. Oh my God. And again, thank you so much for your patience. And so when we're talking about synthetic biology, and when we're talking about, there's a term here I want you guys to write down, and it's a very powerful term here. That term is called phosphorus, okay? Capital P-H-O-S-P-H-O-R-U-S. Now, somebody might say, well, Bishop, what does phosphorus or phosphoric acid have anything to do with transhumanism and its connections to new eugenics? I'm glad you asked. So the term phosphorus, notice the last 5 letters of H-O-R-U-S reveals the word Horus. Horus is not only the third eye, but the eye on the back of the $1 bill at the top of the pyramid or the pyramid, which has 13 steps representing the first 13 degrees within the Masonic order. So President Trump is being used by God to topple the deep state as we speak. And this term phosphorus is a Latin term also meaning eugenics. Phosphorus is also a second Latin word, which means Lucifer. Wait a minute, I'm confused now. So we're going to use phosphorus or phosphoric acid, which is a Latin extension of the term not only Lucifer or Lucifer, spelled backwards, recycle, which means the recycling in fecal matter. That's all the deep state is. But also phosphoric acid is a compound that's found in soda pop and soda drinks and meats and foods all over this country and all over the world. So the people are eating themselves to death because they are regurgitating a self-transhumanism and self-transmutation, a psyop of death where they are killing themselves. Okay, the GlaxoSmithKline doesn't have to do that. Pirbright doesn't have to do that. Novartis AG doesn't have to do that because they're putting it in our food supply. Phosphorus, phosphoric acid, as we're talking about transhumanism and its connection, my sister, to new eugenics. One of the major corporations on this earth is called Ginkgo Bioworks. Capital G-I-N-K-G-O Bioworks. It's a biotechnology company created, I believe, going back 11 years ago in the year 2009 in Massachusetts, right? And so then you got founders like Tom Knight, Jason Kelly, Reshma Shetty, Barry Canton, Austin Che. A lot of these people have millions of dollars worth of shares where? In the Google Corporation. Oh my God. So then Google, which was actually started with not monies, okay, going around with the people who are in charge of Google today. That company was actually started with George Soros money. So give me a couple of minutes before we get the floor over to you, and then we're going to get deeper into Google, because what you and I are eyewitnessing today, not just through the Novartis AG Group and the Pirbright Institute and GlaxoSmithKline, because if your listeners can type the address in 666 Goldson Road, capital G-A-O-X-I-M. So 666 Goldson Road, which is the address of the Wuhan Institute of Biotechnology, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and the Wuxi Pharma Aptech. Now somebody say, how do you spell Wuxi? Capital W, capital X-I Pharma Aptech, which all three are owned, guess you got it, Bill Gates and George Soros. Also, other companies like Johnson & Johnson, the Pfizer Corporation, the Pirbright Institute, okay, Novartis AG, they got satellite offices and plants at the same address, which is the epicenter, my sister, of COVID-19. So this is transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. So Genco Bioworks, okay, it is nothing more than a Trojan horse, a biotechnology company for the propagation of what we call eugenics. Now, also, I want to reveal there's another term here called CRISP, okay? Write it down, everyone, capital C-R-I-S-P-R. Now, one may say, Bishop, what is CRISP and what does CRISP have anything to do with transhumanism and new eugenics? I'm glad you asked. So CRISP, it is a biochemistry term signifying a segment of DNA. So when we say DNA, we're talking about deoxyribonuric acid or RNA, ribonuric acid. So CRISP, again, capital C-R-I-S-P-R, and as a side note, that term, capital C-R-I-S-P-R, CRISP, is an acronym of an Ashkenazi Hebrew term meaning Antichrist. So then, what is CRISP? It is a segment of DNA containing short repetitions of base sequences involved in the defense mechanisms of what they call prokaryotic organisms to viruses. In other words, CRISP is a genetic engineering tool that uses a CRISP sequence of DNA, deoxyribonuric acid, and also RNA, ribonuric acid, and it is associated with proteins to edit the base pairs of a gene. In other words, these devils here today, okay, through the Bill and Melinda Robin Williams Gates Foundation, and that's a side note, where did COVID-19 come from? The first 10 proteins and pathogens, Sister Christine, were created by the Chiron Corporation out of Emeryville, California, back in 2006. You can go to nih.gov, the National Institutes of Health. In the upper right-hand corner, type in Chiron, capital C-H-I-R-O-N, capital C-H-I-R-O-N, out of Emeryville, California. It will show a U.S. patent number of COVID 1 through 10. And then those 10 pathogens were sold to Novartis AG Group for $5.7 billion, okay, late in 2006. And then the Novartis AG Group was bought by GlaxoSmithKline, okay, in March of 2018 for $13.7 billion. And GlaxoSmithKline, which now, as of March 2018, owned COVID 1 through 10, bought an 80% interest in the Pirbright Institute, and thereby also purchases, or they buy the property rights of COVID 11 to 18. Also, then GlaxoSmithKline, as of November 2018, were the sole property right owners of COVID 1 through 18. 1 through 10 from the Novartis AG Group out of Basel, Switzerland, and COVID 11 to 18 from the Pirbright Institute out of London, England, which is subsidized through the Bill and Melinda Robin Williams Gates Foundation. And so, my sister, in January of 2019, all 18 pathogens is sold to who? To the People's Republic in China, to the Ministry of State Security, which is the Chinese equivalent of the American CIA. This is transhumanism on another level, Sister Christina. Transhumanism that is connected to new eugenics. In other words, COVID-19 represents the greatest global cover-up in human history. That's why Dr. Little Tony Mitchell Fauci and Bill Gates, okay, and through the Pirbright Institute and Novartis AG, including that terrorist organization called the World Health Organization, where Dr. Tedros Adhanom, who needs to have his behind in prison, Dr. Tedros Adhanom, he is a eugenicist and also a communist out of Ethiopia. These people don't care about you and I, as we're talking about transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics, okay? So the history, okay, of CRISP, when we're talking about the discovery of clustered DNA repeats, occurred independently in 3 parts of the world. And we talked about the first description of what would later be called CRISP, okay, at the Osaka University in Japan, going back to 1987. Now, as a side note, when we're talking about CRISP, capital C-R-I-S-P-R, okay, and this gets even more deeper now as we're talking about transhumanism. I absolutely love this topic that you chose, woman of God. Transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. So then, when we're talking about CRISP again, let's stay there. So CRISP, capital C-R-I-S-P-R, simply means a cascade associated complex for antiviral defense. Let me say this again. Oh my God. I'm telling you. Again, CRISP means a cascade associated for the complexity for an antiviral defense. This is where the term vaccination comes in. So they're fighting President Trump, the deep state. They don't want President Trump, okay, to use his own form of vaccination that he's promoting. These deep state devils want him, like Dr. Loda Tony Midget Fauci, Dr. Deborah 3000 Scarfs Burks, okay, whose daughter sits on the board of the Clinton Global Initiative in the Clinton Foundation. I'm talking about the daughter of Dr. Deborah Burks. That's a conflict of interest. Another topic for another day. So that when we're talking about a cascading association for the complexity of viral defenses, this is the new, what we call the global industrial vaccination complex, where they want to exterminate you and I, my sister, not because of the color of our skin. They want to fulfill what we call, and everyone please write this down, solve, capital S-O-L-V-E. Let's write it down again. This is important. Solve, capital S-O-L-V-E, E-T, coagula. Now, somebody may say, what does solve, E-T, coagula have anything to do with transmutation and transhumanism in connection to new eugenics? So the term solve, E-T, coagula, capital C-O-A-G-U-L-A, that is a scientific meaning that there must be a certain dissolvement of a world population in order to refill that space with the blood of the global elite. Let me say this again. This is transhumanism in connection to new eugenics. So solve, E-T, coagula is on the forearms of Baphomet. And that's a sign up for a lot of you kids out there that love the Harry Potter series. The British writer J.K. Rowling, she is a Luciferian person. She is a Satanist. Now, if you type in on Google Images, J.K. Rowling's solve, E-T, coagula tattoo, or J.K. Rowling solve, E-T, coagula tattoo. How do you spell coagula? Capital C-O-A-G-U-L-A. So she has those words, Sister Christina, tattooed on her forearm. These people are telling you who they are, as we're about ready to end on transhumanism and its connection to new eugenics. So we're talking about CRISP, or we're talking about these corporations of the Novartis AG Group and GlaxoSmithKline and the Pearl Institute and the Wuhan Institute of Biotechnology and the Wuhan Institute of Virology or the Wuji Pharma Aptech, including Genco Bioworks. All of these companies, pharmaceutical and biotech companies, are subsidized with billions of dollars from the global Baltimore, Lucifer, deep state in order to perpetuate a global conspiracy of extermination. But it's not going to work because the Bible tells us that no weapon that is formed against us shall prosper. And that is the end of transhumanism, its connection to new eugenics. And I thank you, my sister.
Thank you so much, Bishop Gaiters. You are the red pillar to the red pillars, as you said before. Yes. And I love your nicknames for everyone. They're just killer nicknames. The only other person that I know that gives nicknames like that is POTUS, and you're just like,
oh, thank you so much.
This has been really educational for me, and I know also it's going to be very educational for my viewers. It's really important. It was really important to me that I let Bishop Gaiters just speak and not be interrupted, because when you have this much information and you're trying to start at the beginning and kind of paint a picture of the past and then move into the future and how it's affecting us now, it's so important just to let it was important to me to let you just speak and not be interrupted, because all this information is very important. A few things that I want to just mention here.
Yes.
Now you had mentioned synthetic biology, and I just want to read a quote, and I know maybe this is going to be a repeat of some information from some past videos, but that's okay. I want to read a quote from someone named Neri Oxman. Neri Oxman is a scientist who works at MIT, and she works for Media Lab at MIT. She was given money by Jeffrey Epstein. So she is one of the scientists that is working in that lab on projects that have to do with synthetic biology. And this is a quote from her. She was on a TED Talk, and she said, quote, "I like to think of synthetic biology as liquid alchemy, only instead of transmuting precious metals, you're synthesizing new biological functionality inside very small channels. It's called microfluidics," end quote. So the reason why I'm bringing that up is we were talking about transmutation. So that's a very interesting kind of connection there. And you also mentioned Ginkgo Bioworks. That company, Bill Gates actually invested in that company.
Yes.
And there are multiple technocrats that invest in these companies. And what's really important to understand about this science that is being funded are the people that are funding it. And we talked a lot about, or we heard a lot about Margaret Sanger. Now, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Margaret Sanger's grandson, Alexander Sanger, married Thomas Watson's granddaughter. Her name is Jeanette Watson.
Wow.
And so Thomas Watson, the founder of IBM, one of the founders of IBM, he actually helped Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party to create the technology they needed to track and be able to kill Jewish people during World War II. So,
wow.
In my opinion, that kind of lumps him in, Thomas Watson, in with eugenicists. And of course, we know Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist.
Yes.
So this is a clear example of how this is a generational, movement for them. And it is something that this is something that's been pushed for many, many years. But the people that are going to be kind of rolling out transhumanism, I want to read a definition really quick on transhumanism. Transhumanism intends to use sophisticated technology to engineer and upgrade the human population's intellect and physiology to superhuman levels. So it's really important to understand that if we are going to be allowing people that are really excited about these things, if you're going to be allowing these individuals to change your physiology and of course, your genetic makeup, and then those genes are passed on to your children, it's important to understand the mindset of the people doing it, because people always have alternative agendas. I don't care who they are, or, what their background is. Everyone has an alternative agenda, even if they say that they're not going to allow their personal belief system to influence their decision making. Come on, we can't be naive. So public scientists such as Bill Gates, they have been given the job by the cabal of convincing the public that if we don't accept the science used in modern eugenics, we are depriving those most in need. They always try to make us feel like we aren't, especially the Christian community, we've really been kind of pushed out of these conversations. So, they use things, for example, with Bill Gates, using gene drives to modify insects that carry disease. So they wanted to do this to stop the spread of diseases like malaria in impoverished countries. And yes, that is important to protect people. But what I don't like is that these sciences and technologies are not being monitored, or, there's no important questions about the ethics of these technologies. And so, they're beginning to experiment and implement with these technologies such as gene drives to manipulate genomes and genetics of insects. They can do it with animals, mammals, they can do it with human beings. And it's really important to understand where that can go, and that not everyone has these best of intentions in mind. And if people care about inequality, then people need to come to terms with the fact that having technology that will change our DNA, like the hopes of transhumanists, to change our DNA to make us smarter or stronger or healthier, whatever it is that they're looking to do, that, in my opinion, and I don't know what your opinion is on this, Bishop Gaiters, but that, in my opinion, is going to create an even bigger gap in inequality. So the people that are talking about wanting, especially liberals, right? These are the same people that want this supposed utopian society by implementing socialism or democratic socialism. They want a utopian society of humans that are modified to become, like I said, smarter, healthier, whatever. But these same individuals have ignored history, and they want to erase all proof of the dangers and the terrible consequences of eugenics.
You see, and what you just said the last few minutes, Sister Christina, was absolutely mind-blowing. And I have to confess, I've been in radio for 25 years. I have been, I've been hosting for the last 25 years Global Spiritual Revolution Radio, but I've been a guest on thousands of radio shows all over the world. You are one of the most intelligent, one of the most informed hosts that I've ever been a part of in 25 years. And that tells me that you, my sister, you are a true patriot. You are a deep thinker. Just to kind of piggyback on what you said, there is a generic term that's been out for a while. It's called Luciferase. Interesting. Capital Luciferase, which is an acronym for the term Lucifer, or Lucifer's Project through NASA. All of these terms that the deep state is using, not just names of demons, but the title of Satan, who is the devil, Lucifer. So luciferase is a generic term used for the class of oxidation or oxidational enzymes that produce, okay, bioluminescence, bioluminescence, or is usually distinguished, okay, from a photoprotein. In other words, in English, it's gene editing, but using the name of a fallen entity going back 6,000 years. And you hit a nerve with me, woman of God, a couple of minutes ago. There is a term that not too many people know, and this term is called heteropaternal superfecundation. That's a long word. Again, heteropaternal superfecundation. Okay, that is a term where a mother has fraternal twins, 2 boys, 2 girls, a boy and a girl. Though the twins belong to the same mother, but the twins belong to two different fathers. So this term, heteropaternal superfecundation, now somebody may say, what does superfecundation have to do with gene splicing, gene editing, okay, in connection to transhumanism and to new eugenics? At the University of Beijing, they're trying to, through scientific studies now, have women to have 3 or 4 babies at the same time from 3 to 4 different men. This is demonic. As to what would make the Chinese government in Beijing, not the 1.4 billion Chinese citizens, okay, who are under the regime, the suffering of this evil regime in China that must be taken out. But this term here, heteropaternal superfecundation, heteropaternal superfecundation, where a mother has fraternal twins, but the babies belong to 2 different fathers. So the side of the deep state goes back to not just to the Nephilims in Genesis chapter 6, but also going back further to Genesis chapter 3, chapters 4 and 5, concerning the serpent and the serpent seed of Cain. Now, earlier today, I was thinking about you today when I was on Jason Goodman's show. You were heavy on my mind because I knew tonight would be a heavy broadcast, all right, concerning this transhumanism, this transmutation in connection to new eugenics. And as I was thinking about you during the day, woman of God, this term, heteropaternal superfecundation, where a mother can have twins, same mother, 2 different fathers. Now, the University of Beijing, including the Wuhan Institute of Biotechnology, which is the epicenter of COVID-19, they want to create scientifically, put into women the ability to have triplets or 4 kids through 4 different fathers. And the question is, why? Because these are devils who have a luciferic psychology and a luciferic cognitional way of thinking, you know? In my conclusion, and so sorry to keep you so long tonight. So this term, these 2 scientific terms, neuroplasticity, where the human brain becomes the shape of what the individual is thinking at that moment. Now you have the rioters, okay, through problem, reaction, solution. The deep state creates and manufactures crisis. George Floyd, God rest his soul, who's 6'6.5", but the coffin is 6'1". We'll talk about that next time. And then through the problem, reaction, solution, it forces the masses of the people to react, mainly Black America, that will force a solution from the deep state that they already had before they created the catastrophe. That's problem, reaction, solution. And now through COVID-19, these devils, through luciferase, all of these vaccinations through MCR5, which that vaccination is a composition, my sister, of skin cells from dead fetuses. These are devils in our government on the left. I have never, Sister Christina, I have never in my life seen a level of darkness until Trump got elected. And I asked God, Lord, why is it that when President Trump got elected, all this darkness came up? God told me that President Trump was ordained by God to expose the cell of the deep state. That's why they want to destroy him, but it's not going to work. And in my conclusion, so all these vaccinations, including MCR5, that they want to put in children, so it's from the decomposition of cells from dead fetuses. Who does that? But the deep state. And this is the connection of transhumanism, transmutation, bioengineering, geoengineering through gene editing and gene splicing, okay? In connection to new eugenics. Isn't it funny? Isn't it interesting that none of the deep state families want to take this vaccination, but they want you and I to take it? Sister, I'm telling you, this has been probably one of the most powerful broadcasts I've ever been on. I kid you not. And you are a gifted host. You have such a high level of intelligence, of what we call intelligentsia. And I thank you, Sister Christina, for standing in the gap and making up the hedge. And thank you so much. And looking forward to coming back for part 2 of transhumanism and its connections to new eugenics.
Yes, thank you so much, Bishop Gaiters. And I just want to leave the audience with one last thought, okay? So
yes, take your time.
For all the parents out there, all right, I had a thought today, and I believe the way that the media will eventually manipulate parents into believing that genetic modification is what's best for their children and the future generations of their family will be the same way that they manipulate parents now. Look at the way that parents are treated by the media and those that are manipulated by the media when they homeschool, resist or question vaccinations, don't make their children wear masks during COVID, etc. So it's really important to not back down when you have a gut feeling that something's not right. And, you know, I know that in the future, it's going to come to a point where parents will be told that it's basically child abuse if you're not willing to manipulate their genetics so that they don't have a certain disease or so that they're more intelligent. But you know what? We are made perfect by God.
Yes.
And that's the important takeaway at the end here, as I'm closing, is trust your gut and just remember that God made you perfect. And I know that that's maybe a long ways off, you know, maybe several years or maybe a generation or two down the road, but it's important to understand that now and to teach your children that now. Teach your children that they were made perfect. They're perfect just the way they are. So yeah, in closing, I definitely want to do a part 2 because there are a lot of, in modern society, there are a lot of areas where we're seeing modern eugenics in our society today. And that might sound really strange, you know, other than genetic modification and things like that. But modern eugenics, okay, definitely right off the bat, we've talked about CRISPR, we've talked about abortion clinics, but also things like sperm banks, dating apps, genetic counseling, DNA testing with at-home kits, birth control, sterilization, manipulation of sexuality, hereditary disease, prenatal testing. So these are things I want to talk about in the future. This was a fantastic interview. I can't wait for the next one. And thank you so much for it's just been such a blessing to have you on this show. And thank you for sharing your expertise and your knowledge with us on this particular topic.
Woman of God, you are, again, you're probably one of the most intelligent, not just intelligent hosts that I've ever been in contact with. You're one of the most intelligent people. You know, and I teach hosts, you got to prepare, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. I believe in preparation. And next time we're going to probably get into part 2, volume 2 of this transhumanism and its connections to new eugenics. Who owns 23andMe?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
why does 23andMe want your DNA? What are they looking for, Sister Christina? What are they looking for? You see, because 23andMe in connection to gene editing, gene splicing, and organ harvesting, where mostly people of color, not to make a color issue, what is it about the organs of a Black person that the deep state on the left wants? It's called
Yes.
melon. They want melon because melon is sold, not just on the Black market for millions of dollars around the world, but melon is sold at the stock market here in Wall Street. They're selling melon, not just here on Wall Street, but on the global stock exchanges. Where are they getting that melon from? From organ harvesting, from people of color who have been murdered, okay? Because of the system of the left. So 23andMe, that's connected to Google, what are they looking for? So we're going to be getting into this in, next time. And thank you so much. And with your permission, Sister Christina, with all of your listeners, if you want to financially support the Bishop at Global Spiritual Revolution Radio, please go to paypal.me/GSRR Media Group. Again, beloved, paypal.me/GSRR Media Group. One more time, beloved, paypal.me/GSRR Media Group. Whether it's $50 or $100, $500, if you can afford that. I know times are tough right now because of the shutdown, but please sow into Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. And again, this has been a fantastic and an amazing interview. Thank you so much, my sister. You're a true patriot. You're a true woman of God. And I'm telling you, someone taught you well at home. Because you're one of the most intelligent hosts I have ever encountered in my entire life. Thank you so much.
Well, that's a huge compliment. Thank you so much. And I just want to say, for anybody that's able to support the radio show, Bishop Gaiters radio show, it's really important that we support all of the researchers and the hosts of these shows, because we don't all have time to research this material ourselves. And a lot of us that do this, we do it because we feel driven and we're passionate about it, because we're being led by God to do this. But it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. I mean, sometimes we're even spending our own money to fund these projects. But it's really important. I mean, I always recommend to people, cancel your Netflix subscription. It's satanic anyway. Or cancel Hulu or cancel Vudu TV, whatever it is. And support people like Bishop Larry Gaiters. So thank you so much. I can't wait to have you on again, and have a fantastic night.
You as well, Sister Christina, and to all of your listeners, have a fantastic night, and we will see you next time for Volume 2 of Transhumanism, its connection to new eugenics. Thank you so much, my sister. We see you next time.
Goodbye.
Goodbye now.